There's the otter.
There's otter. Okay, there's my note taker. Let me hit record over here. Look at this computer. Record to cloud. All right, it looks like we're connected live up here. Yep, we are. Okay, hello everyone. This is Dr. Roger Paul, and tonight we are going to continue our study on paper 129, the later adult life of Jesus, I believe is what it is. So we can put that right there. Okay, and we're in section. I had it right up here, and I was trying to fix my sound. We're in section 2, the 28th year AD 22, and that starts on page 1421.6 of the original Urantia Book, or paper 129.21. We are in the section of the life of Christ. For those who aren't familiar with the Urantia Book, that's the fourth part of the book, and very interesting section. It relates the entire life of Jesus from the time he was born to the time he was died and resurrected, and his time during the resurrection. I hope I'm not going to get feedback from myself here.
It says, say, hey, otter.
Yeah, don't do that.
Oh.
That's why. Okay, it'll talk back to you. It's AI. Unless you want to answer the question. Otter, what's the meaning of life? Hey, Otter, what's the meaning of life? Doesn't have an answer.
I think it's a little slow. It's just, I see it says, hey, Otter.
Yeah. I don't want to talk to the guy right now. What can I do? What's the meaning of life, Otter?
Roger, he
Yes.
told you to refer to a website. He gave you a reference.
Oh, did he? Does it
Yeah,
take
he did.
See that.
Yeah.
Does it take it to our website?
I don't know where, but he gave you a reference. That's what I saw. He put it in the chat.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I'll
Well,
have to get it later. Oh, I don't even have Otter up on my computer here. That's okay. It'll still take no.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Yeah.
The only thing I see is a little box that says, hey, Otter.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean,
Well,
under chat.
if y'all will stop saying "Hey Otter," it'll
Yeah.
go away in a minute. If not, we're going to do this all night long. Trust me, I know these things. I've been working with this AI over and over and over again. I'm trying to get our videos out there online without having to beg. I'm begging people to subscribe to our YouTube channel over and over. I put please subscribe at the beginning, all of our quotes and everything else. I keep putting please subscribe everywhere, and I get like one a day. So I'm way off. I need to get it over 500 so that the computer at YouTube will start pushing our videos out to people that will watch it. So that's why I keep doing this. I'm not nuts.
I have subscribed.
Yeah. So,
I have too. I've been long time
yeah, most
subscribing.
people have been on there long time. You know, so well, let's get started. That's what people came to listen to, not me. Okay, let me change the screen. All right, Diane, why don't you start out here?
28th year, AD 22.
It'll be weird because you hear yourself talk.
Oh, it's reverberating.
Yeah, I can't keep it changing.
Okay.
I have two pictures up. One with the
That's
chart,
got nothing to do with it.
and you're not muted on the chart. Okay, there you go.
Let me hit this.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. 2, the 28th year, AD 22. In March AD 22, Jesus took leave of Zebedee and of Capernaum. He asked for a small sum of money to defray his expenses to Jerusalem. While working with Zebedee, he had drawn only small sums of money, which each month he would send to the family at Nazareth. One month, Joseph would come down to Capernaum for the money. The next month, Jude would come over to Capernaum, get the money from Jesus, and take it up to Nazareth. Jude's fishing headquarters was only a few miles south of Capernaum.
Okay, so since Jude's fishing headquarters was not far from Capernaum, he could go over and visit with Jesus. He could take the money that Jesus made to the home and that sort of stuff. And the remainder of the money, the Zebedee family invested for Jesus. So all the money that he made went into his investments, but Jesus did not know he was making that much money. So just kind of interesting. Okay, I guess I'll read next. When Jesus took leave of Zebedee's family, he agreed to remain in Jerusalem until Passover time, and they all promised to be present for that event. They even arranged to celebrate the Passover supper together. They all sorrowed when Jesus left them, especially the daughters of Zebedee. So they all liked Jesus very much, didn't they? Okay, Rodney, would you take the next one?
Yes. And again, my apologies for my voice.
Oh, that's all right.
Before leaving Capernaum, Jesus had a long talk with his newfound friend and close companion, John Zebedee. He told John that he contemplated traveling extensively until my hour shall come, and asked John to act in his stead in the matter of sending some money to the family at Nazareth each month until the funds due him should be exhausted. And John made him this promise: "My teacher, go about your business, do your work in the world. I will act for you in this or any other matter, and I will watch over your family even as I would foster my own mother and care for my own brothers and sisters. I will disperse your funds, which my Father holds, as you have directed and as they may be needed. And when your money has been expended, if I do not receive more from you, and if your mother is in need, then I will share my own earnings with her. Go your way in peace. I will act in your stead in all these matters."
Okay, now y'all remember that John Zebedee is the one that the book of Revelation came from, right? Also, that John was the Zebedee brother that took care of Jesus's mother after the crucifixion until she died about a year after that, right? So he was a very, very good friend to Jesus. All right.
Are they about the same age?
He was about the same age as Jesus, too.
No.
Yeah.
He was younger, much younger.
John was?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
I was thinking he was the one that was about the same age as Jesus.
no.
I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. Okay, Pam, go on.
Who?
You?
Okay. Therefore, after Jesus had departed for Jerusalem, John consulted with his father Zebedee regarding the money due Jesus, and he was surprised that it was such a large sum, as Jesus had left the matter so entirely in their hands. They agreed that it would be the better plan to invest these funds in property and use the income for assisting the family at Nazareth. And since Zebedee knew of a little house in Capernaum, which carried a mortgage and was for sale, he directed John to buy this house with Jesus' money and hold the title in trust for his friend. And John did as his father advised him. For 2 years, the rent of this house was applied on the mortgage, and this augmented by a certain large fund, which Jesus presently sent up to John to be used as needed by the family, almost equaled the amount of this obligation, and Zebedee supplied the difference, so that John paid up the remainder of the mortgage when it fell due, thereby securing clear title to this 2-room house. In this way, Jesus became the owner of a house in Capernaum, but he had not been told about this.
Okay, so he was a property owner and he didn't even know it, right? And probably the large sum of money he got was probably from working for the merchant, tutoring his son and working as an interpreter for him. So that's probably where the money which Jesus sent to him later came from. All right, Jane, would you take the next one?
When the family at Nazareth heard that Jesus had departed from Capernaum, they, not knowing of this financial arrangement with John, believed the time had come for them to get along without any further help from Jesus. James remembered his contract with Jesus and, with the help of his brothers, forthwith assumed full responsibility for the care of the family.
So they were in a situation where they felt the funds would stop from Jesus completely. So they ended up taking over the full responsibility themselves. Gary, you're not going to believe this, but you got a short paragraph.
It's good because I have eye drops in. Okay, I'm serious.
Yep.
Is that it?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Let us go back to observe Jesus in Jerusalem. For almost two months, he spent the greater part of his time listening to the temple discussions with an occasional visits to the various schools of the rabbis. Most of the Sabbath days he spent at Bethany.
Okay, so he lived a pretty normal life, and this is a picture of Jerusalem. We got multiple of these throughout the book. All right. Let me read again, dear, and then you read, because that's the order we had on my screen over here. Jesus had carried with him to Jerusalem a letter from Salome, Zebedee's wife, introducing him to the former high priest Annas as one and the same as my own son. Annas spent much time with him, personally taking him to visit the many academies of the Jerusalem religious teachers. While Jesus thoroughly inspected these schools and carefully observed their methods of teaching, he never so much as asked a single question in public. Although Annas looked upon Jesus as a great man, he was puzzled as to how to advise him. He recognized the foolishness of suggestion that he enter any of the schools of Jerusalem as a student, and yet he well knew Jesus would never be accorded the status of a regular teacher, inasmuch as he had never been trained in these schools. Now, remember, Annas is the one that ends up the chief instigator to crucifying too. All right, dear.
Presently, the time of the Passover drew near, and along with the songs from every quarter, there arrived at Jerusalem from Capernaum Zebedee and his entire family. They all stopped at the spacious home of Annas, where they celebrated the Passover as one happy family.
So you saying that
You're muted.
Roger?
I got you. Yeah.
are you saying that Jesus's family was friends with Aunt Annas, who
No.
No.
No, Annas was relatives with
Zebedee.
Zebedee's wife's brother. No, Zebedee's wife, right?
Okay.
So he was
distant
related to
relative.
her, not to the Zebedees, not to Jesus' family. Okay.
Okay. And yeah.
All right, Rodney.
I went and grabbed my cheat sheet, and John is 8 years younger than Jesus.
John was,
So
Rodney?
whereas Jesus is 28, John would be 20 now.
20. Okay. All right. Where'd
Okay.
you learn that from, me?
No,
I
you can't really see
mean, from a previous class. I forgot.
Made
Long,
it.
long time ago.
Hey,
Yeah.
had a long time.
I'm joking with you, Rodney.
Okay. Before the end of this Passover week, by apparent chance, Jesus met a wealthy traveler and his son, a young man about 17 years of age. These travelers hail from India, and being on their way to visit Rome and various other points on the Mediterranean, they had arranged to arrive in Jerusalem during the Passover, hoping to find someone whom they could engage as interpreter for both for both and tutor for the son. The father was insistent that Jesus consent to travel with them. Jesus told him about his family and that it was hardly fair to go away for almost 2 years, during which time they might find themselves in need. Whereupon this traveler from the Orient proposed to advance to Jesus the wages of 1 year so that he could entrust such funds to his friends for the safeguarding of his family against want. And Jesus agreed to make the trip.
So this is the large sum of money that he sent to the Zebedees, in which they paid off the house, right? And invested
Correct.
the money. It was a year's salary, a year out of the 2 years salary, right?
Mhm.
All right. Peter.
Jesus turned this large sum over to John, the son of Zebedee, and you have been told how John applied this money toward the liquidation of the mortgage on the Capernaum property. Jesus took Zebedee fully into his confidence regarding this Mediterranean journey, but he enjoined him to tell no man, not even his own flesh and blood. And Zebedee never did disclose his knowledge of Jesus' whereabouts during this long period of almost 2 years. But Jesus returned from this trip. The family at Nazareth had just about given him up as dead. Only the assurance of Zebedee, who went up to Nazareth with his son John on several occasions, kept hope alive in Mary's heart.
Okay, so after Jesus was gone, there was no telephones back then, right? So they didn't know where he was for that almost 2 years and didn't hear from him. There was no mail or anything like that. So
Father Zebedee was very loyal.
Was what?
Very loyal.
Loyal.
Loyal. Oh, yes. Very loyal. He was.
Yes.
All right. Jane, would you take the next one, please?
During this time, the Nazareth family got along very well. Jude had considerably increased his quota and kept up this extra contribution until he was married. Notwithstanding that, they required little assistance. It was the practice of John Zebedee to take presents each month to Mary and Ruth, as Jesus had instructed him.
So they were kind of spoiled, weren't they?
Yeah.
Any way you look at it. All right, Gary, would you take the next one, please?
3, the 29th year, parentheses AD 23. The whole of Jesus's 29 years was spent finishing up the tour of the Mediterranean world. The main events, as far as we have permission to reveal these experiences, constitute the subject of the narratives which immediately follow this paper.
All right, an interesting thing about this. Notice in this paragraph it says, as far as we have permission to reveal these experiences.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
You see that? So
Yeah.
the Midway Commission that was assigned to reveal the whole life of Jesus still had things that they had to keep very close tabs on during this revelation, because there's some things that Jesus did in his life that are not revealed in these papers.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's important to know, because someone could come along later and say, well, the Urantia Book has everything Jesus said and done, and that's not true, is it? Because there's some things that the Midwayers were not allowed to reveal. And during these times, the reason I wanted to make sure I brought this up was there are 600 something other planets in our local system, and I'm sure during these times he related things to folks that had to do with those planets and not ours. Okay, so sometimes he may have been teaching for the benefit of those who were not on this planet, but benefit of those who are off this planet. That's the reason they probably did that. And then the Midway Commission was not allowed to reveal those things because they had nothing to do with us. All right. Let's see here, I'm up again. Throughout this tour of the Roman world, for many reasons, Jesus was known as the Damascus scribe, or the scribe of Damascus. Did you know? I bet y'all didn't know that, did you? At Corinth and other stops on the return trip, he was, however, known as the Jewish tutor. So he was known as a lot of different things. Diane?
This was an eventful period in Jesus' life. While on this journey, he made many contacts with his fellow men, but this experience is a phase of his life which he never revealed to any member of his family, nor to any of the apostles. Jesus lived out his life in the flesh and departed from this world without anyone save Zebedee or of Bethsaida, knowing that he had made this extensive trip. Some of his friends thought he had returned to Damascus. Others thought he had gone to India. His own family inclined to the belief that he was in Alexandria, as they knew that he had once been invited to go there for the purpose of becoming an assistant Shazan.
Interesting part about this is, all these other things that Jesus did. It says in one place in the book that Paul the apostle made a connection that the scribe of Damascus sounded just like Jesus. He never, so he kind of made the connection unknowingly that that's who it really was. All right. Rodney, would you take the next one?
When Jesus returned to Palestine, he did nothing to change the opinion of his family that he had gone from Jerusalem to Alexandria. He permitted them to continue in the belief that all the time that he had been absent from Palestine had been spent in that city of learning and culture. Only Zebedee, the boat builder of Bethsaida, knew the facts about these matters, and Zebedee told no one.
So he thought it was nobody's business but Jesus, so he didn't tell anyone.
So it really wasn't
a
lie. He just let them believe what they believe.
What they wanted to. That's right. Pam, would you take the next one, please?
In all your efforts to decipher the meaning of Jesus' life on Urantia, you must be mindful of the motivation of the Michael bestowal. If you would comprehend the meaning of many of his apparently strange doings, you must discern the purpose of his sojourn in your world. He was consistently careful not to build up an over-attractive and attention-consuming personal career. He wanted to make no unusual or overpowering appeals to his fellow men. He was dedicated to the work of revealing the Heavenly Father to his fellow mortals, and at the same time was consecrated to the sublime task of living his mortal earth life, all the while subject to the will of the same Paradise Father.
So he was totally committed to just doing his mission, wasn't he, while he was on the planet? All right. Jane, would you take the next one, please?
It will also always be helpful in understanding Jesus' life on earth if all mortal students of this divine bestowal will remember that while he lived this life of incarnation on Urantia, he lived it for his entire universe. There was something special and inspiring associated with the life he lived in the flesh of mortal nature for every single inhabited sphere throughout all the universe of Nebadon. The same is also true of all those worlds which have become habitable since the eventful times of his sojourn on Urantia, and it will likewise be equally true of all worlds which may become inhabited by will creatures in all the future history of this local universe.
So a lot of different planets from a lot of different places are benefiting from the story of the life of Jesus here on this planet. So doesn't that make you wonder or think that all the other planets, the life on other planets is very similar to the life on ours?
Mhm.
Do you think that?
I think they may be smarter.
Yeah, they may
Well,
be smarter, some of
but
them.
still yet very similar.
Yeah,
It would
yes.
have to be.
Yeah. I mean, why would they all benefit from the teachings of Jesus while on this planet if their lives on their planets were not somewhat similar to what happens on ours?
I mean,
Right?
how could other planets make use of as many parables?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
Oh, that's
they would,
interesting, Rodney,
they would have to have
because,
things
yeah,
to relate.
the parables are interesting because they could be of a different material body and a different, uh, different existence in terms of their physical needs.
Well,
But
there's a
you're
lot.
right, Rodney, the parables, like a sower and things like that, it would indicate they eat from the ground.
Mm-hmm. Well, it says in the book, almost all the planets in the universe all till the soil for food.
Yeah,
So if that's the case, most all the planets get their nourishment, most of their nourishment, probably from some sort of plants or things like that. But we've talked about the non-breathing planets and things of that nature that they get their energy from the sun itself. So that would not be necessary, but they might still till the soil to grow, flowers and plants and things like that for their animals, or a lot of
for
different,
the animal. Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So, it seems like there is a common thread that seems to go through all of this throughout all the universes. It's kind of funny. The more, working on this book that I've been working on, teaching these advanced concepts, even the advanced concepts that we taught in the 28 or 26 week class we had, even those concepts have a basic thread of truth of them through them for every single type of inhabited planet. And that's because what they've revealed to us in the Urantia book is true for all planets, the higher concepts. So I find that kind of interesting. And, it's really apparent when I start putting these things together for these class things I've been making that goes along with the book. All right. Let's see who's up next. Gary, I think you're up again.
Okay. The Son of Man, during the times and through the experience of this tour of Rome, of the Roman world, practically completed his educational contact training with the diversified people of the world of his day and generation. By the time of his return to Nazareth, through the medium of this travel training, he had just about learned how man lived and wrought out his existence in Urantia.
So he got the opportunity to be exposed to so many different types of people, just about every type of people that were person that was on the planet during that period of time. Because going through the Mediterranean, meeting the Oriental people, going to Rome and things like that, you got an example of almost every kind of people you could think of, person you could think of that end up in Rome at one time or another.
So, Roger,
Yeah.
only the red race did not benefit.
No, they did not benefit. You know, it's interesting though, Rodney. I always wondered this, and this is just my speculation. It makes you wonder, you know, with all the stories from like the Mormons and people like that, and the red men themselves of people that visited them and that sort of thing. It makes you wonder if after Jesus was resurrected, now they don't tell us this in the Urantia book,
Correct.
but it makes you wonder if he did not appear to some other civilizations outside of Rome and the Orient and Palestine, that sort of thing. It makes you wonder if he did not appear to some civilizations that were like in South America and America itself and that sort of thing before he left. And they just did not tell us about it because it had nothing to do with us.
They do have the legend of the Great White Spirit.
Yes, they do. You know. So doesn't that make you wonder a little bit if
It does make it. But why wouldn't they tell us? Because that is still planet Earth.
Well, it's still planetary and that sort of thing, but it does make you wonder if there's a reason why they did not, because the society of the world back then had not discovered those other peoples, you know.
Okay.
Correct.
And they did not want to upset our history that much because, you know, it makes you think about it. When you think about the stories of Caligastia and the 100 and the giants because of the 60 that defected, the Nadites, that sort of thing, the Anunnaki, there's lots and lots of things that happened because of the Caligastia 100 and Adam and Eve and that sort of thing that really did not get recorded properly by the Jewish people because they didn't have a writing system. And by the time people started writing things down, everything was hearsay and legends that they told each other and that sort of thing. So by 1934, 1935, we were really not that high on the scale to know about things like what they're teaching on ancient aliens and things. That stuff wasn't around back then. So they didn't want to give us they mention this in the book, they don't want to give us an over revelation either. In other words, they don't want to reveal so much that it psychically it overwhelms human beings. And that's probably the same reason that the midwayers and that sort of thing nowadays don't make appearances to people unless it's some kind of spiritual emergency or something like that, right?
You know, if they would have revealed more than we knew in 1935, say, it would have hampered the spread of the book because too many people would have, especially academia, their intellectual egos would have that word egos would have fought it.
Oh yeah, they would have rejected it right off the bat. Really, they would say this is fantasy. This is a fairy tale, right? Yeah. And you know, it's kind of funny too. Let me relate this to y'all. Y'all been seeing these podcasts I've been making with the man and the woman talking.
Yes.
Y'all listened to, you know, those. when I'm making those, I try to make sure I approach it outside myself. So in other words, it's other people talking about it. But the concepts that come out in these videos are very high level, even now. You know, you think about it, people in this day and age are not that advanced on spiritual concepts. And the concepts that we teach are heavy duty and hard to understand. And the reason I did the podcast thing is I was trying to bring it down because the book ended up, writing the book ended up to be very high level. It's on a very high college level, and I wrote it that way so that we cover most of the highest level and the lowest level. And the podcasts are meant to take care of those people that are on our lower level to make them understand, because they cannot comprehend the higher stuff I've written in the book.
Correct.
You know, so that's why there's the dichotomy. And I have another thing planned, which I'm going to do a podcast that's just me talking, that's somewhere in between the two. Okay. And the reason being, I want to cover all levels of intelligences so that when people hear this, they see it on YouTube, they see it in other places, they can relate to it. And that's the whole thing about teaching the Urantia book, is it's got to be taught relatability. In other words, if you can't relate to it and you can't understand it, you're wasting your time.
That's right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense? So
Yes.
we want to do it for all levels. And that's why when we have these meetings, we take it as about as basic on the lower end as we possibly can, don't we?
Yes.
Really? We, you know, it's that old saying. I used to have an instructor in philosophy school, and you know what his favorite saying was? Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
You know, you make it too difficult, nobody's going to understand it, right? So that's what we try to do, is keep it simple. Okay, now who's up?
I think you are.
I am. All right. The real purpose to this trip around the Mediterranean basin was to know men. He came very close to hundreds of mankind on this journey, and he met and loved all manner of men, rich, poor, high, low, black, white, educated and uneducated, cultured and uncultured, animalistic and spiritual, religious and irreligious, moral and immoral. That pretty much covers everybody, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We have to. Sweetie, can you read that?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
On this Mediterranean journey, Jesus made great advances in his human task of mastering the material and mortal mind, and his indwelling adjuster made great progress in the ascension and spiritual conquest of the same human intellect. By the end of this tour, Jesus virtually knew with all human certainty that he was a son of God, a creator son of the universal Father. The adjuster more and more was able to bring up in the mind of the Son of Man shadowy memories of his paradise experience and association with his divine Father ere he ever came to organize and administer this local universe of Nebadon. Thus did the adjuster little by little bring to Jesus' human consciousness those necessary memories of his former and divine existence in the various epochs of the well-nigh eternal past. The last episode of his pre-human experience to be brought forth by the adjuster was his farewell conference with Emmanuel of Salventon, just before his surrender of conscious personality to embark upon the Urantia incarnation. And this final memory picture of pre-human existence was made clear in Jesus' consciousness on the very day of his baptism by John in the Jordan.
You're muted.
I said, that explains a lot, doesn't it, y'all?
Yeah.
Any way you look at it, because These memories were brought to Jesus' mind a little at a time, and by the time he got to his baptism, he knew who he was before, right? And this was important. Why? Because Jesus would, if he would have been a normal man, he would have fused with his adjuster, but he wasn't. So he didn't fuse with his adjuster. So his adjuster was personalized. So all these pre-human experiences had to be relayed to Jesus's mind before the adjuster was separated from his mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because after he separated from Jesus's mind, then the adjuster would have to communicate directly with Jesus by voice, I guess, in order for Jesus to gain any benefit from saying anything to him, because he was no longer in his mind, he was separate from his mind. So think of it this way. When you try to do the will of God in your life, we kind of have a advantage, because the adjuster does what? It dwells within our mind. It's not separate, right? It lives with us, not superimposed on top of us. You see what I'm saying? And that, with Jesus in his final days when he was preaching, his adjuster was no longer inside him any longer. That's very hard to understand.
At what point did Jesus' adjuster leave him as a separate entity and go on as a separate entity?
After his final Urantia appearance. After he died, after he made his 19th Urantia appearance, apparently on earth, but I can't say that exactly, Gary, because he went on to the mansion worlds and made appearances there after he left here. So the adjuster probably followed him there also. So sometime after he did everything he was going to do, but when he returned to become Jesus, become Michael once again, at that point the adjuster was totally separated from him, and that personalized adjuster then came back to the planet Earth in his head of all the adjusters on Earth.
I wonder if Jesus went on to the Urantia world to meet with the people that have died during his lifetime that he would have met as a normal human being, you know.
Well, yes, I'm sure that's the case, but also those who died before he was even born, because there was eons and eons of people in the mansion worlds that had lived and died on this planet for, several 100,000 years, that had gone on to the mansion worlds, and many of those would still be on the one of the 7 of the mansion worlds, trying to get rid of their beastly tendencies. Okay. So I'm sure many of them were still there, because sometimes it takes millions of years to get off all the mansion worlds.
Roger,
Yeah.
I think it was the very next day after he ascended from earth here that the Spirit of truth was poured out.
That's true.
So you would think he would have.
Well, yeah, pretty close.
So you would think that it would have separated.
Well, they would have separated on the baptism, so they had been separate for 3-something years, 3 years and some months, right? Now I'm sure Rodney can give me the exact date and the time down to the seconds. Just kidding you, Rodney. But these little menial things I can't remember.
I had to write it down.
Yeah, I'm sure you got it written down somewhere. So, okay, let's go on. Rodney, I think you're up again. The human Jesus.
Yes. The human Jesus. To the onlooking celestial intelligences of the local universe, this Mediterranean trip was the most enthralling of all Jesus' earth experiences, at least of all his career right up to the event of his crucifixion and mortal death. This was the fascinating period of his personal ministry, in contrast with the soon following epoch of public ministry. This unique episode was all the more engrossing because he was at this time still the carpenter of Nazareth, the boat builder of Capernaum, the scribe of Damascus. He was still the Son of Man. He had not yet achieved the complete mastery of his human mind. The adjuster had not fully mastered and counterparted the mortal identity. He was still a man among men.
You know, it's kind of funny that it says to the onlooking celestial intelligences of the local universe. This was the most enthralling, and this is to them, this is the most important part of his life. And to us, we didn't know anything about it until this revelation.
I would have loved to go along
Yeah.
with them on this trip.
Yeah, that would have been.
No kidding.
So,
That
Yeah.
would be a good pilgrimage.
yes. It would
You
have
know,
been.
that would have been if somebody wanted to organize it, I wonder how many people that know the Urantia book would like to take one of these trips that they organize
That would be
that
cool.
would duplicate Jesus's trip. This one did. I
Yeah.
think it'd be fascinating.
That'd
Oh,
be,
I do too. You know, there has been groups of people that's done things like that, Gary, over the years. Back in, gosh, I think it was about 2008 to 2010. There was several groups that had gotten together and did not only a tour of Jerusalem and the Holy Land, but there was a couple of them that did more extensive trips like this, and it was all Urantia people. In other words, it was all people that had read the book. So I think that would be fascinating to go around with people that
that would be great.
really knew this stuff well, and you could relate to
Yeah.
it.
Private sailboat,
Yeah.
charter one.
And that kind of fell off, for all the wars and stuff that was going on over there. They come and go, and they get worse and get better and that sort of thing. So I don't think anybody's doing that right now. It's not real safe to go to some places over there. So it's
Just as a side note,
mhm.
I saw on one of these webcasts I watch that in the area we're referring to, there's a boat design out there that's used today that is nicknamed the Jesus boat.
Yeah, I don't doubt that.
And somewhere I read that Jesus design had a unique design for a boat. So
Well, we covered that last time on the.
I was not here. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll say ditto then.
That's actually the cover of this week's lesson is one of the boats they think was built by Jesus. So, go out and look at it when you have time. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Pam, I think you're up next.
The purely human religious experience, the personal spiritual growth of the Son of Man, well nigh reached the apex of attainment during the 29th year. This experience of spiritual development was a consistently gradual growth from the moment of the arrival of his thought adjuster until the day of the completion and confirmation of that natural and normal human relationship between the material mind of man and the mind endowment of the spirit, the phenomenon of the making of these two minds one, the experience which the Son of Man attained in completion and finality as an incarnated mortal of the realm on the day of his baptism in Jordan.
The importance of the way this works, y'all, can't be stressed enough, because in Jesus's previous incarnations, the other 6 bestowals, he appeared as a person of that realm and that type of being, wholly aware of whom he was. Okay, So the first 6 bestowals, when he appeared as a Lanandak son or a spiritual teacher, whatever, he knew who he was before. So he had all his previous memories. It was only on the 7th bestowal that he started out as a babe and knew nothing about himself, right? So it wasn't until he was almost 30 years old, 29, 30 years old, before he became totally aware of whom he was to complete his bestowal as a human being. So you have to think about it this way. Up to the point of his baptism, he was a man and mostly a man. But after his baptism, he was a man and God at the same time, living as a earth creature all during his ministry and walking around with the apostles and teaching folks and all that. He was aware of who he was again, right? Just like he was in this first 6 bestowals. So his mission, his mind was totally consumed with the mission of the 7th bestowal at that point. Okay.
Can I
Which
ask
is
a question?
different. Huh?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
In the traditional Christian religion, especially the Baptists, they put tremendous emphasis on baptism.
Right.
And I wonder, with the revelation of the Urantia book, that emphasis is still any importance. For instance, because Jesus was baptized, and I just don't know how that the ceremony of baptism relates to the Urantia book and the belief.
Okay, let me say it this way. When John the Baptist was baptizing folks, he was doing it for the remission of sin, right? In other words, the concept, in the Baptists believe the same thing. The concept is this: if you're baptized, you become a new person. All your sins are washed away, and you start from square one once again, right? Jesus had no sin. So he did not have to be baptized for the remission of sin. He did it for an example for all those out there to start his ministry as his 7th bestowal. Okay, but let me put it lightly. I'm going to try not to insult too many people. We do not have to be baptized for remission of sin. Why?
Because we're forgiven from the get-go.
You got
I
it.
can answer
You're a
that
smart
one.
man, Gary. Give him
Huh?
give him an apple. He's a
I'm a
smart man.
smart man in dumb man's clothing.
That's right. That's right. So why is it we don't have to be baptized for the remission of sin? Because God forgives us to start out with, right? The whole concept of the sacrificial lamb was an error, a logical error philosophically from the beginning.
Well,
Okay.
it goes beyond that.
It
If you
goes
go
way
into
beyond
the
that, but I'm
material
trying to keep it
world,
simple. You
if you
know?
look into the material world, Roger, and if you're head of a large corporation like the church, say, okay, if you are the exclusive holder of the baptismal rite, you have cornered the market.
Yeah, you have, but let me put it this way. Baptism is good for those who are believers in concert in a church or a group or whatever, because it's an outward confession that you believe certain things, and this is a way to show everyone around you you're willing to go through this process to show everyone that you're a part
And
of
I
it.
think it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Let me put it this way. I've been baptized, y'all are not going to believe this, 7 different times.
Wow.
Okay?
That
I
means you're very holy.
I got dunked so many times. I hadn't been sprinkled, but I was dunked a lot. Okay. About every church I went to had to redunk me. You know, I was baptized as full gospel. I was baptized as Pentecostal. I was baptized as a Mormon. I was baptized as a Baptist. I was baptized as a Presbyterian. You know, you name it. I've almost been baptized, with the exception of the Catholic Church. Okay, I have not been baptized a Catholic. The sprinkling, you know. But the fact
Roger,
is,
the Catholic Church would not have baptized you.
No.
You know why? Because they accept
Try it again.
any baptism if it is done in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Right.
It's got to be done in the three persons.
And
otherwise, it's not Christian according to the Catholic faith.
And we
but
know
you
that
only
because,
get baptized once.
Well, we know that because is an error, because we're not baptized in the Holy Spirit, are we?
Yes, we are.
If you're going to make it right, it would be the infinite Spirit, the Father, Son, and the Spirit.
No, but we have here on earth, you know, the Father, Son, and the Spirit. It's Urantia teaching that is different.
Yes.
But there are billions and billions of Christians that, you know, that's their understanding. And
Yeah,
so
well, that's
it is
fine. There's
complete.
nothing wrong with that. That's fine. We're all going to end up in the same place regardless, right?
That's right.
But what I'm saying is, I'm not saying baptism is wrong. I would love it if the Urantia Society and the groups individually or however would baptize people as believers in this faith. You know, I think that would be a wonderful thing. I really do.
But it's not a church, you see.
Yeah.
It is not meant to be like that.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
So,
it's meant to be studied and to be learned and to be shared.
That's right. That's right. It's just the thing of faith and belief among a group of people. That's what it boils down to, right?
You know, you made a good point. The act of baptism is kind of like an initiation into a club.
Correct.
It is. It is.
Into a faith.
You know, so you know, if the rancher people would want to you know, do that as an initiation into the faith.
I wonder how come I was
that'd
never
be fine,
baptized
but
as a chiropractor.
it wouldn't be justified, huh?
I wasn't baptized as a chiropractor. I wasn't baptized as a sports medicine doctor. And I wasn't baptized.
No, I think it would qualify if they decided to baptize people. It would be good.
Yeah, I could if I wanted to. I've been ordained anyway. Well, listen, y'all, we're out of time. We're down to 6:57. Let me swap the share out here. Got off track there, didn't we? Sure. Yeah. Okay.
You want to read it?
Pam, would you like to read the prayer for us tonight?
Prayer of acceptance. I believe that God is my paradise Father, and that only by faith am I saved. No sacrifice is necessary. By the same faith, I become a child of God and know that all men and women are my brothers and sisters. We know the Son of God, the sovereign of our universe of Nebadon, as Christ Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. By allowing the will of God to become my will, I will someday stand in the presence of the Paradise Father. In the name of Christ Michael, Jesus of Nazareth, Amen.
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 Thank you. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
Thank you
all
everyone for coming, and I will see everyone on Thursday that can make it.
Great.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Love you guys.
Good night.
Good night.